Good evening, this is Dr. Troy Fullerton with Bilingual Barrier Busters, and I want to talk strangely enough tonight about the color purple. In the color purple, we actually have two primary colors mixed together. We have red and we have blue. But when we see the color purple, we don't think of red or blue, we think of another color. We think of the color purple. Now, in English, we have one way to say the word to be. Of course, we have different forms of that verb. When we conjugate it, let's talk about the present tense. We have I am, you are, he is, we are, they are. So am, is, and are considered parts of the verb to be, and we simply use the verb to be whenever we want to talk about a state that something is in, where something is at, what something is like, the whole thing. Now, in Spanish, we have two verbs that can be translated as to be. We have the verb ser, soy, eres, es, somos, son. And we have the verb estar, estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. Now, if I am thinking in Spanish, then I am not seeing purple anymore. I'm seeing red and I'm seeing blue. That is, I've got two completely separate words that I would never confuse because they are totally different from one another, even though in English we mix those concepts together. So in my English-speaking mind, I see the color purple when I think of to be. But in Spanish, I've got to see red or I've got to see blue. They are totally different. So what's so different about them? Well, it depends on what you mean by am, is, or are. This sounds strangely familiar. It sounds kind of like a famous political figure in the past, but what do we mean by is? What do we mean by am? What do we mean by are? Well, listen, how you are and where you are, this is when you use estar. What you're like and where you're from, then you use the other one. In order to begin to understand, we have to understand that the verb ser comes from the Latin verb esse, which is where we get the English word essence or essential. If I'm talking about what something is really like, then I'm going to use ser for that. But the verb estar comes from the Latin verb stare, which means to stand. If I'm talking about how something stands at the time, then I'm going to use estar for that. That could be where I'm at. That could be how I feel as a result of something that made me feel that way. It is possible to learn to distinguish between the two. It just takes some practice and a little study.